Alright. Howdy. Decided to do a couple more minutes of film today. Gotta rant my ass off, quite frankly. Was watching the news yesterday, got up. This has to do with the debt crisis. I don't know if you're familiar with the United States of America. We're about $14 trillion in debt. A while back, they set up a rule during World War I. Instead of having to get every single thing that the government spent, paid for individually, they just set an annual debt limit, or a debt limit, excuse me, and that was how much we could borrow. Over the years, we continued to raise it. Particularly in the last decade, we raised it quite a bit. Now we're facing a vote to raise it again. This has been a big political debate for the last little while. I turned on the news on Sunday and I watched Mitch McConnell. He's the Senate Majority Leader for the Republicans in the Senate. Being the Majority Leader of the Senate, that's where he has to be. And he was talking a little bit about taxes. Now, I want to go back, and I know it's so crazy that does nobody remember this? I know Republicans totally want to forget the Bush years and totally forget that whole disaster and then blame everything that happened on Obama. And when Obama says, well, it kind of sucked, and then, oh, you're just blaming Bush. Bush fucked shit up! I mean, okay, we had, in the year 2000, we had a balanced budget and projected surpluses. I don't know why anybody can't remember this now. What we did then, in 2001 and then 2003, was cut taxes huge. Biggest tax cuts we'd ever done. When they were done, they were promised that what this is going to do is stimulate the economy, it's going to grow it, everybody's going to get more jobs, the wealth is going to go around. That's not what happened. And this is what kills me about this debate, is we've got 30 years now of this data, of them saying, you know, taxes are too high, and if we just cut tax rate, government revenue will go up. And it doesn't fucking work. It worked once in 1967, I believe, when the top tax rate, and this is, by the way, is in the good old days, when we were a free market, and the top tax rate was 90%, and they cut that, and it turned out that some people had been hiding their money, and so they got more revenue from it. So the idea that people still think is that when the top tax rate is 38%, if you cut it to 25, all of a sudden this money's going to appear? And it's fucking retarded. Nobody's going to try and break the law for that little amount of money. But when it doubles the amount of money you get to keep, when you have to give 90% to the government, then it makes sense. We're not in that situation anymore. You can't hide money in Swiss anymore. We just sued UBS for doing this. We've been going after this money. Terrorists try to hide money. You can't do it. You raise the tax rate, revenue goes up. You lower the tax rate, revenue goes down. We had a balanced budget, we cut the tax rate, the debt went huge. And this isn't even 10 years ago. I can go back a year, and the Republicans refused to even entertain the notion of not keeping the Bush tax rates. They signed a pledge that they would do nothing unless it got done. And they needed the certainty. And they did it, and they passed it and cut $400 billion more in taxes. And now, 6 months later, they're saying, what the fuck? Where's the money? We're in debt. We can't do it. And they refuse to even entertain the notion that a government can raise taxes to pay its own debt. They refuse to even consider the notion. Newt Gingrich is going to come out in the next few days with a no tax pledge. And he's going to ask all the other Republican candidates to sign it, where they absolutely promise to refuse to raise taxes to pay down government debt. Do you realize that's totally insane? That is how governments pay debt! That's how they used to pay for wars. But what we've tried to do in this country is switch the way that we pay for our government. And instead of taxing people, what we've decided to do is cut taxes, give that money to a small group of people, and then borrow that money from them to pay for stuff. So instead of taxing the wealthy, we borrow money from it. Now, unless you're a tard, I'm sorry, I'm not going to go there. Alright, we'll cut that out maybe. What this is moving us towards is a country where the entire role of government is to pay the interest on our debt that somebody else racked up. Because there's not going to be any money left for services, because if they keep cutting taxes and then cut the services when we run out of money, it's just going to keep going. And we're going to keep borrowing it from ourselves. It's just a little bit. Now I'm all for raising taxes on everybody. I have no problem with going back to the Clinton era tax rates. For me personally, it's about $2,000 a year right now. No problem. And it's, oh God. All right, we're gonna cut here. All right. Calm down a little bit. Stuff makes me angry, and this is why. Because right now we have another plan in there, how to deal with the debt. This is the Ryan plan, as they call it. What Ryan wants to do, and he's the senator from Minnesota. Excuse me, he's a House member from Minnesota. He might run for the Senate seat. What he wants to do is remake Medicare. Medicare was basically a promise that we made to our citizens of this country that if you work in the country your whole life, pay your taxes, when you get old and infirm and can no longer support yourself, we'll help make sure you can go to the doctor, you can go to the hospital, and we'll pay for it. And that's what we promised that we made to our citizens. Now, Paul Ryan is out and he put forth this plan where he's going to change that concept. And he's going to change it into this thing where instead of government being your insurance provider, they'll instead give you some money to go buy insurance on the free market. And it's a set amount of money that goes down in relation to what healthcare costs have been. It's indexed to inflation. Healthcare costs have been rising faster than inflation. Every analysis you look at says essentially what this does is cuts the amount that the government's spending on Medicare, spending on our own citizens to keep them alive. Now, they do this, and he balances this out in his budget, this is the Ryan plan, by cutting taxes on everybody. It makes the top tax rate by down another 10%. And then, supposedly, and this is what the thing is that's so crazy about the Ryan plan that the Republicans are signing on to, it has all this closed tax loopholes thing. Well, we just had a chance to close tax loopholes for oil companies, which are doing great, and it got voted down. So what exactly are these tax loopholes that's going to get closed? Nobody will say. And one of the things also that's going on, and this is what McConnell did that made me so angry, in addition to his inability to conceive of the notion that a government could raise taxes to pay down government debt, he talked about what they call premium support versus vouchers. And he says in the Ryan plan that it calls for premium support. And then he was on Fox, and Chris Wallace was like, well, what's the difference between premium support and vouchers? And he's like, well, Ryan says there's one, and that's not important. You know what the difference is between premium support and vouchers? Semantics. It's the amount of public acceptance for one type of word versus the other for the exact same thing. By the way, this is how the death tax came around. You know why? Because everybody dies, right? And everybody is afraid of a death tax. But an estate tax only applies to people who have big estates. I think currently $5 million. But an estate tax, well, that's obviously only applying to a small group of people, whereas a death tax, everybody gets death. So then you'll call it a death tax. By the way, guess who wants to totally get rid of the estate tax? Newt Gingrich. Guess who wants to totally get rid of the capital gains tax? Newt Gingrich. Guess who's going to sign a pledge for no new taxes? Newt Gingrich. So we're running a debt crisis created by cutting taxes when we had a balanced budget. And now we have an entire political party that refuses to consider the notion. Refuses. So what's happened? How is this debt changing our society? How is it? What's happened here, and why is this going on? What's going on for the last 30 years, roughly? And this is probably the easiest way for me to measure it, because it kind of goes into my lifetime and the stuff that I've experienced. But there's been massive productivity growth. What productivity growth means is that workers in general do more every day. They produce more. Their productivity goes up. Now, for your productivity, you get paid in wages. And this has gone on basically forever. So, as a society develops, productivity continues to increase. This is what happens with technology. It multiplies productivity. Now, I hate to be just so simple on the economic terms here, but what's happened over the last 30 years is productivity has gone huge. As we've started to use computers and machines and all sorts of stuff, and wages have not. At least not in this country. And even in a lot of other countries. But what a lot of other first world countries have done is instead of increasing wages, have provided more services. So as all this productivity goes on, that extra wealth is spread for everybody because it's everybody creating it. But what we've done here is instead concentrate that wealth And now we're borrowing that money from those people to pay our own stuff and then cutting their taxes some more. This is moving us towards a country, and this can happen, it's happened to other places, where everything the government does and collects is only enough to pay the interest. That's when it's over. Like, who's going to pay taxes then? And that's what we're heading towards. And we can stop it, and we can do it, but if we don't raise this debt limit, we're going to make it that much worse. And now we have a political party that, in addition to refusing to deal with the concept of raising taxes, is openly saying we should default on our debt. Openly saying, we have people who ran on this. I'm not going to raise the debt limit. The debt ceiling is too high. And I think that by just not raising the ceiling, I can make plants stop growing. Excuse me, doesn't that like break the plants and you cause a whole bunch of other problems when it's really just a ceiling that you put in there yourself? Well, I don't like government, and therefore I'm right. I'm Tea Party man. I mean, what is wrong with these people? Elect me to government, and I will do horribly. This is their plan. And I think this is the cynical part, and this is what I'll end it on. The only way I think that the Republicans think they can beat the guy who killed Osama bin Laden and took our country from the brink of depression into a decent economy, which people will realize is a pretty good thing. The only way they can beat him is if the economy sucks. And if it's horrible. And if we don't raise the debt limit, it will be. It's going to knock off, bam, a percentage of growth. Bam. In a day. So, that's my rant. That's why I'm kind of annoyed at this shit. Hopefully I can get it all on the YouTube. Thanks for your time. You have a good day.